Zen, I got it. It's like crack. Literally like crack. It's just so beautiful. I like to just bite half of it, right? You know how they talk about chase the rainbow? It's like cocaine, right? What am I feeding right now? Think about it. Just makes me want to sing. It's so good. You have no idea. Ferrero chocolate is just so good. There's people who ask certain questions online, right? Questions that if they ask themselves, they'll get true answers. But it just requires a little bit of faith and belief in yourself. If your faith and belief lies more in an individual you listen to online, then you're giving your power away. Because there's times where people say, if we are all connected and we are all one, then what happens if you're sick and in fear? How do you overcome that? It's hard to overcome these things. And this is a very interesting question, right? That when you really come from this space of, I'll give you an example. Let me make it easy. I like to give examples to kind of put things into perspective. You know better than to be eating a certain way or being, right, a certain way that's not conducive to your chemistry. Let's say if you're eating a lot of fatty foods, fried foods, a lot of stuff that is not very, very good for you, right? You may get sick, right? If you don't have a strong constitution, because people could eat trash until they're old. But, you know, this goes into many layers. It's just not the chemistry that does it, but it's the belief toward the things that you're intaking that have that chemistry. And upon, even if you didn't know, but then you became aware that these things are not good for you and you still do it because you know better, but you're still doing it, they may do a little more damage to you because you're eating that food with the mindset that you know it's bad for you. It's kind of like you're programming it unconsciously to do what you don't want it to do, you know, just upon knowledge and taking it anyway, saying, I know better. You know, I shouldn't be doing that, but I'm going to just eat it anyway because I just feel like I want to have it. So sometimes I even ask people who have high blood pressure, diabetes and whatnot, you know, they're looking for something. They're looking for something to take to help them with their condition. And then I say, well, how's your diet? And the first thing they say is, oh man, I'm working on that. Not that good. So they already know that the diet is not that good, but yet they're still working on it, right? Rather than making that change instantly, right? But when something traumatic happens, I'm talking about some fucked up shit where they're in such a debilitated state that their doctor may tell them that they're close to dying or they developed the symptom called the disease. Now, all of a sudden, they want to change. Now they completely change their diet. They completely now try to do things correctly to try to neutralize their condition. However, this change is coming from a state of fear though. Okay? So when it's coming from a state of fear, it's still coming from an inflammatory act. Now, fear, there could be a healthy fear and a very debilitating fear. Fear could be used that if you're in a fight, it keeps you sharp. It keeps you focused and stable. So let's say if you're sick, the fear could be good because it keeps you disciplined and focused to make a change. But if you're in that fear and that fear takes over you to some extent, just the fact that that fear could be channeled toward you having a fear of death, because that's where your focus is at, it may kill you faster. But if the fear is used as a weapon to try to change your condition, kind of like you hate something so much that it forces a change, but it's still coming out of love. Now, You could do it in a state where if you are love, because we are all love, okay? But if you are love, love is a building frequency and is also a very strong neutralizer. That's why people say, when somebody is doing something inflammatory, don't engage in an inflammatory way. What you do is you give it love and you neutralize the situation, right? But a lot of people's egos are too fucking strong, and that's actually hard for certain people to do. But in actuality, how I've always mentioned in many of my videos, how the true definition of we are all one is you actually looking at this external world as you inverted inside out. And the way you want your insides to be is how you should be outside of yourself. So it's not just the food you're eating, but the fact that you have an understanding and an awareness, where in the Bible it tells you treat man as you want to be treated yourself. Where if something is being inflammatory to me, right, and I respond in an inflammatory way, I'm creating an inflammatory situation. It's kind of like consenting that you want that inflammation that you creating outside of you to manifest within you. Why? Because in order for you to react a certain way to somebody outside of you, you have to be holding on to an emotion such as grudges, anger, hate, envy, jealousy, whatever it may be. Because sometimes if there's a situation that you're bigger than, you let it go. I'm bigger than that. You look at that as fucking nothing. That's nothing. I don't decide to engage in that. Because the moment you engage in something, you're judging it to some extent. But upon judgment, you have to wear that now. Because you involved yourself in it, right? You involved yourself in it. Now you're wearing that as a badge, right? And anybody can basically, it's literally open for attack because you're putting a badge on, a symbol, okay? So this is why it's important to look at these things and always be in that state of love. Now, when you are in that state of love, it shouldn't have to be where you have to experience a traumatic situation for you to now all of a sudden want to be changed. You want to change something. If you truly look at your body, because the thing is, I actually did this. I was laying in my bed, and you know how kids usually they put their feet up and they're grabbing their feet and they're looking at their feet. It's kind of like they're in on their back, and then they put their feet kind of like close to their face, and they're very flexible. So I was doing that, and I'm looking at my feet, and I'm like, I barely ever look at my feet, and they looked foreign to me, and they kind of sparked something in me. I'm like, I never really look at my feet as much, and I could walk on the earth barefoot as much as possible, be in squatted positions and whatnot, but I'm never really looking at my feet. And upon looking at my feet, I got fascinated because I look at my hands all the time, but I don't look at my feet a lot. Then I'm like, wow, these are my feet, and I'm looking at them. But a kid is always looking at these different body parts. They may even bite their toenails and then look at their toenails and whatnot. I mean, that's how much they're involved with their feet, So, yeah, we cut our nails and whatnot, but we're not really like looking at our feet. It's like a weird thing. So I cut my nails, but I'm not really looking at my feet until I really laid in that position. And my intention was just to basically, stretch my spine, work on the flexion part of my spine. So I kind of like do that, take some deep breaths. But then I actually took the time to this time look at my feet, And it's funny how we and the only reason I even bring this up is just like a love for your body. Not in a vanity type of way. I'm talking about really love your body. And it's funny how these things now you start to look at your body differently. You don't look at it because look, in Hollywood, for example, a lot of people buy property, buy certain things just to impress their neighbor. Because there's different kinds of people on the planet. A lot of people go to the gym to work out to impress other people, to go out in public and feel good about themselves, or just cater to that visual aspect of yourself, right? And it's funny how we live in this reality catering to the visual aspects of ourselves all the time. But if you had no sense of sight, right? Let's say, for example, we go into a mansion, right? And we have no sense of sight, but we're just walking around the mansion. You're always going to find the actual square footage of the place by just going around the perimeter. But when you're in nature, you have the entire world at your grasp. It's kind of like, but your actual home and present moment is always where you're standing, right? So right now I'm confined in a car, right? If I had no sense of sight, I'm just basically touching here. When I go outside, I feel like I have a sense of freedom, right? I think I'm free only because I'm in my car and I'm able to come in and out of my car. If I'm in my home is smaller than an actual mansion, right? But that gives me the illusion of I am in a lower class than somebody who has a mansion because they have a bigger cubicle. Where if I go out in nature, or everybody goes out in nature, then we all have the same space. However, we're always in our space that's at arm's reach, right? Based on our sense of touch. Or let's say if we just basically, even if we were in nature, right? But we actually close our eyes and disconnect from this, and there's a much more vast space. And the reason this is the thing though, you cannot look at it from the human perspective though, because upon this state, there's something interesting that happens. You're no longer in an environment where you're perceiving dimensions. It's like you are these dimensions. You are this space. There was one time where I'm coming back from a dream and I'm noticing that I'm merging back into my body or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying I'm merging into it like if it was I was outside venturing and then I'm coming back. This is not even a place. I just became the environment to some extent where I was literally, before I woke up, it was like I was the water, the ocean, but it was raining and I felt the water. I felt the raindrops hitting the water. It's hard to explain because I'm not saying that I felt the water like if it was hitting my skin. I felt the water as the water. And I felt the raindrops hitting the water, but I was the water. But it was a very expansive experience. It wasn't like I'm just feeling it from the human perspective of things, right? So I became this water, but before I became this water, I was pretty much everywhere. Like I was all things, okay? So, when we start to talk about, I'm a spirit, and I'm perceiving these dimensions. Spirits don't have eyes. Spirits don't have the sense that humans have. So it's like you're having this experience. The only reason you know what chocolate tastes like is because you're in human form. If you are not in this human form, you don't have those senses to perceive dimensions. So when you're saying I'm perceiving these dimensions, that's part of the mental realm. Just like when you're in a dream, you're still in like a human body type of way. It's like your dream is molded to cater to the perception you have of this reality. But when you go into certain layers where it's like you completely lose yourself, this is why they say in order for you to find yourself, you actually have to lose yourself. It kind of becomes a scary thing, but you kind of like submit yourself or let go to the experience. Because you are merging to whatever it is that you're perceiving outside of you, which is all you. So when we start to talk about we are all one and you are here by yourself, we're using these words to try to put things into perspective for people, but this is not even a place. When they say you're here, you're not here. You're not here and you're not by yourself. There is no self and there is no here. There is no place. Okay? When somebody is in a fearful state and they're sick, the work is to become love, right? When I say become love, because you already are love, but you become it, meaning you're merging with that frequency once again that you've always been. You just had an illusion of separation of that frequency of love, but you are all the frequencies, all of them. What channel do you want to be on? If you're in a fearful state, it's not to say that that's bad or good, because you can use that fear to manipulate the situation and condition you're in. But if you let it take over you, that's where the problem lays. So if I take that emotion, I'm creating a situation for myself that's very powerful to exacerbate a change within me. right? But it takes a realization to know that A, you're in that situation because there is no cause of anything, but in this human form, it's perceived to be cause and effect. But it's caused by an imbalance of chemistry. Start to do an audit of your life. How have you been eating? How have you been living your life as far as like consuming the things outside of you versus processing and giving out what it is you processed? You give out, you get back what you put out, right? That's the cause and effect part that we're here in this human form experiencing, right? And if upon observing yourself in a way, you see these flaws that don't cater to your experience here as a human, this is part of the work that you can do to create this change, to change your experience. Again, you're experiencing the reptilian side of yourself because the same way reptilians camouflage and shapeshift, the world and your experience merges and shapeshifts to you at your command and your will. This is true dominion over the planets, the humans, not humans, but the animals, because the humans are, but all these things are you anyway. You don't have a hierarchy over anything. But don't externalize your power by asking somebody, what if you're in this state and you are unable to do that? Ask these things to yourself and have faith that they will be answered. Okay? Because people actually put so much faith in God that they feel that God is answering them, but that God is themselves, but they're still giving their power away, and they're left in a state where if you don't change that mindset, okay, you're always going to be stuck in this situation as a human, as far as how we would look at it as cause and effect. Okay? The whole point of this is evolution. Evolution. No different than if you're in a toxic relationship, because we go through death processes all the time. But this death process, the actual religious terminology of death, when you detach from your body, that's a loving process. But we fear it so much that we look at it as something, for the sake of conversation, I'll say, not good. So what happens? You're looking for the light to come and feel more comfortable. But you are that darkness. That's the whole thing. And that darkness is scary, but you don't realize that that's true love right there. Unconditional. Formless, shapeless, unseen. There is no, I need this because I'm giving you back. There's nothing in that space. But that's why it has the potential to be everything. Your consciousness and awareness puts you in the state to be able to say, well, not to say, but you're in the state of evolution. Here, if you make a mistake, you know not to make the same mistake. You know better, you do better, right? But you're always doing it in the state, in the state of love, right? So once you have this realization that your body is you inverted inside out, and you start to change the perception of how you see life without judgment. If you're in a state that it's not favoring you, let's say you're in a poverty state, you love it and accept it, loving all things, right? Loving all things. You can let go of the perception you have, right? And then all of a sudden now you're in position of growth and evolution. But you have to be aware of the patterns that got you to that state to begin with. So your DNA, right? The double helix, your one strand of patterns is what makes you as the individual. Upon changing certain patterns, certain things happen. How does this happen? You go into the viral kingdom, let's say, right? And these viruses, for example, are something that's you're not even able to see a virus under a microscope, which means we can actually consider this part of the metaphysical realm. In fact, there's no life to a virus. Nothing. The virus needs a host to be able to have any kind of functions, right? But then we say our consciousness is rooted here, right? These viruses are even you. The fact that they have no life, right? They're you, but we fear them. So what kind of chemistry do they have upon communing with the DNA in your body? But look, I'll make this disclaimer. There's bad viruses and good viruses. But the same way that your body is able to process and fight off bad viruses, and it puts them in a state, neutralizing them, it's no different than people here when they are implanting negative thought forms into your space. You're able to catch it and say, that is not something I'm entertaining. I don't buy into that. And you're neutralizing, because that person is a walking virus, and they're implanting things to you in the form of language. This is called mind viruses, which actually, if you buy into it, shapes and molds your reality, called a simulation within a simulation. Now, we can also look at this in physical form. Like if a guy is highly inflammatory and not conducive to society, like the Pablo Escobars, the Charlie Mansons, and all that kind of shit, where does the system place these people? They put them in a cell block, in a cell, in a space, safe and away from society. So they're neutralized. They can no longer either harm the system, okay, or infect others in any kind of way that's not conducive to the system. But is the system, matter of fact, what is the system to you? What is the government? What is all that? What is MK Ultra? What is mind control? What is all that? So I may have to elaborate a few things, maybe in other videos, but if you're poor, for you to become a person not poor, you have to become rich first. Even though you don't physically have the riches yet, you have to become rich first. You see what I'm saying? So if you're in a fearful, sick state, you have to become happy and healthy. And this is what only comes back to you. But it has to come from a space of love and not fear. Hope this video made sense. If you like it, we'll talk